Oh, I think it's probably better to have props this time around. So yeah, let's talk about The Evil Dead. My relationship with The Evil Dead. That's the title of this classic video where I talk about more horror films. Oh boy, it's October. So of course we have Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead. Classic horror film. Classic, almost B-movie. I guess you'd say it's definitely not an A film, but it has the feel of a B-movie, which is fair enough. And then of course we have Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. My second favourite film of all time. Does that put a personal bias on this? It kind of does, but this is my conflict. So I recently watched both of these two films, almost back to back. It was a few days apart. The point is, you know, I had only watched The Evil Dead twice before this time. I watched it once in 2016, year I graduated high school, yeah. So I watched it once then, and I didn't care much for it. I thought it was alright. Watched The Evil Dead 2, fell in love with it. But then I watched Evil Dead for the second time, just to watch the audio commentary, and it was great. Honestly, yeah, it's probably the best audio commentary around. And so I've watched the third time because it's like, you know, I haven't really thought about it. I like to rewatch films now, mostly with my whole updated film knowledge, both being me having watched a lot of films, but also the fact of, you know, I study film. You know, in university I study film, so it's like, it feels more fun to be able to look at a film in different perspectives. Because, of course, there's my more childish perspective, pretty much everything before, like, you know, 2015, so anything before year 12, pretty much. Because even year 11, year 12, I was studying media, I was studying film, but I wasn't really applying that knowledge to actually watching films, and I don't always do that. I don't always like to watch a film and be like, yeah, I would have done a different camera angle, but I really like it, you know. I don't like to think like that. I don't like to think of the technicals when I'm watching a film, because I like to enjoy it. You know, like, sometimes I might watch the film and be like, you know, I might think of my review that I'm going to write for it afterwards and be like, that's the quote I want to use, or, yeah, it's slow or boring, and just, like, have mental notes of things that I'd like to talk about in my review, or just kind of, like, things I'd like to complain about, or things I'd like to, you know, criticize, or, you know, praise, or whatever. Sometimes I might even think, yeah, this is a 2.5-star film. Yeah, this is a 3.5-star film. You know, I can think of that kind of mindset when I'm watching a film. I don't always, but I can. But sometimes I can read other reviews and it would sway me here and there because of extra little details which I find interesting and fascinating. But the point being, so I watched this film and I gave it a 5 stars. Why would I give it a 5 stars? Because of how excellently crafted it is. And now this is one of the reasons why a lot of people love it. It's a very meticulously crafted film, with, I mean, low-budget horror, but it's cheesy with its effects, but the effects are consistent. Like, we were talking about horror in class the other day, and I was saying how I watched this film, and I was like, look, the film is still scary, even though the effects are cheap, they have a great effect to them, you know, they have a consistent effect between each person in different makeup, between the stop-motion stuff, between the practical horror, everything about it. It's just very well put together. But at the same time, the one thing that surrounds this whole entire film that I really fucking love about it is the atmosphere. I'd argue it's probably the second scariest film of all time behind Alien. Why would I say that? Because it has such a great atmosphere to it. Like, yes, it has the one distinctive flaw of, you don't really know the characters. But it also is, like, how long is... It's not a very long film. It's an hour and a half. So, it gives you enough time to get the characters to the location, which is the first thing that they do. You kind of get to know brief details about them. Hell, I didn't even know Cheryl, I'm very sure Cheryl was Ash Williams' sister until the TV series they came out. But then rewatching this film, there's one line where Cheryl, as a demon, as a possessed person, is like, you know, mentions the fact that it's his sister. Of course, the relationship is obvious on screen, the way that she calls him Ashley, and the way that he's protective of her, but it's not. And I like it. It's not so on the nose. It's not like, yes, of course, sister, I will protect you with everything. You stay away, you bad person. Because, like, there's no one there trying to sleep with her or whatever. It's not anything like that. But, like, it's the least on the nose relationship and the most well realized relationship in a brother and sister thing that I've seen probably in all film. Because you don't realize it, but you do. It's there. So the point I'm getting at is the fact that the characters are a bit not great. I wouldn't say the acting is terrific either, but at the same time, it's fun. It can be goofy, but it works. And especially in the horror scenes, it really works because the overall atmosphere, even when the characters are dressed up like goofy little creatures and whatever, the atmosphere is great. And most of this probably comes from the use of music and sound effects and the vocals that are just like humming around you. It's beautifully done. The camera work is fantastic as well, thinking that there's this whole, like, it literally makes you feel like there's this whole force surrounding the cabin that is going to try and penetrate it and kill the characters by possessing them one by one. And it's kind of like the demons playing with each other, but also playing with their prey. It's not like they're just going to be like, I'm going to kill you and that's the end of it, you know, like, demon comes in, cuts the dude's throat, run away. No. They have discussions about it. They have their goofy, put them in the basement shit, all kinds of stuff, you know. They have their, I'm going to fly around and attack you. They have all kinds of stuff. And it's so, wow. And it makes me think, why do I mean, I know a lot of people love The Evil Dead. And it makes me question, which one's better? Because then you have The Evil Dead, well, not The Evil Dead, you have Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn. And this film is obviously different tonally. This film is a comedy horror. This film isn't isolated completely, like that I could compare The Evil Dead to Alien because it's so isolated to the one location. Realistically, as much as Alien, you go to the planet, the horror, once it starts, it's isolated completely. But by that stage, you know the characters. And realistically, The Evil Dead is the same. Like, there's no other locations they go to. I mean, the basement is one, but there's nothing else. Like, they go in the basement, they find the Book of the Dead and the sword, the dagger. I can't remember what it's called. I'm not great with names. But at the same time, they go down there. They never really go up. They never really go down there again. You know, they can trap Shell and the other dead demons in there, but they really don't utilize it that much. That's mostly because of budgetary reasons, obviously, because there was no actual basement in the cabin. They shot it somewhere else. Fun fact. But then you've got the Evil Dead 2, and it's the same setup. I really don't connect these films narratively at all. Like, you can't. You can't at all. Even if you try and say, oh, well, the second one, the second one properly starts when you've got the shot that goes through the house just like at the end of the first one. It's like, no, not really. The first one's a tight film. It works really well. The second one, I don't want to compare narratively. I don't want to connect narratively. I want to see this. I see the second one as like, oh, it's evidently they've used the nail of the first one. They've used the character of Ash Williams and the Deadites in the Book of the Dead because they've established it all. And they're like, hey, let's do this one again, but better. And that's already hard to say because, damn, is the Evil Dead good. But then, of course, Evil Dead 2, you've got a great performance from Bruce Campbell, of course. You've got a whole bunch of different characters that come in. But, of course, you break away from them, too. You get the shots of them in the castle. You get the shots of them coming the airport. And then, of course, outside the bridge, when the bridge is broken, then they have to trail all the way up. So it's like, it gives you enough time, of course, to be with Bruce Campbell's character, and to see him go insane, and it's so well done, especially with him, you know, how he visualizes this from the vocal work to the fact of his possessed hand and chopping off, then just going insane, him jumping up and down with everything. My favorite scene in the whole franchise, most people's favorite scene in the whole franchise, and yet I still love the scene, like, so much later down the film when so many other people have died, and it's just Ash and the archaeologist girl, I don't know her name, and he fucking sets up that goddamn chainsaw, and that whole entire scene is so badass. But that's also the thing. Tonally, this film is all over the place. It's like, oh, here's a good horror scene, and instead of it being like, here's just a kind of line or two of dialogue that's like funny enough that'll kind of ease attention, like the first one has. And the first one kind of uses it pretty decently. Actually, I think it uses it pretty well because it also kind of changes the character perspective, because the dynamic, I should say, because you think one character is the main character, but then it turns out, no, it's Bruce Campbell, and you kind of start to sense that when he seems more heroic than the other character who's kind of being more jock type, but at the same time, he's still caring enough. I feel like some of what they do is a bit awkward for how, like, one guy will go in the room and slowly and everything, but it's tense, it's horror, it's great, it's greatly atmospheric. It's not the most logical thing, but it's a horror film. Most horror films don't have a logic anyway. But the second one is just all over there tonally. It goes straight comedy or it goes straight horror. Sometimes mixes. My favorite scene with all the things going crazy and laughing, it's hilarious. But it is scary as well, because this is all shit that's being possessed. He's going insane. He's being, like, haunted by all these demons and stuff, and it's great. But I feel like I would like to argue that The Evil Dead is a better film. And it's annoying to have to say that, because there's a lot of people who would say, like, oh, The Evil Dead, it's all, it's not great in comparison to Evil Dead 2, because the effects are better in Evil Dead 2, except for the string work, I think. Well, they didn't do string work in the first one, so it's okay, I guess. You've got Henrietta, you've got the guy who turns into the demon, he's flying about, his eye gets punched out of his head and goes in the girl's mouth, and all that happened to him was they got thrown against the wall. It's like the whole first third of the film is like, let's do this whole Bruce Campbell thing, mix in the little things of the other people, and then boom, they collide. Then the second act is they're all in the cabin, they're all getting picked off one by one. Final act, Bruce Campbell, chainsaw hand, with the girl who can translate, go up again. Yes, I've just defined the act structure of the film. And it's the same as the first one. They arrive at the cabin, they do some stuff, read from the Book of the Dead and the tape recorder, then all shit breaks loose in pretty much in the second half of the first act, or the second act, I guess, if you want to, and people start getting possessed and stuff goes crazy, people get killed off. Final act, it's the last few people, mostly just Bruce Campbell taking down the rest of the Deadites. It's fun. And it's a tight narrative. I don't know. This is what I'm saying. This is my relationship with these two films. I love Evil Dead 2. I hate rewatching it. That's a bad sentence. I hate rewatching it so often, because though the film is so terrific, and I mean, like, look at that cover art. Damn, son. I wish they'd actually released the 4K. This is the 4K remaster. I wish they'd released the UHD version in Australia before I'd bought this. They released it 6 months later. I love when they do that. But the point being is that this film is all over the place. And I don't mind. Like, since the first time I watched it, I loved it. Hell, it was my favorite film until I watched 2049, Blade Runner 2049. And it's weird, because, of course, it's a horror film. The Evil Dead does better horror. Evil Dead does obviously better comedy, does better slapstick, but it also mixes them quite well. Obviously, Army of Darkness becomes its own thing, more or less, because it's still horror, but it's like 25-30% horror. The rest of it's, medieval slapstick comedy, and it's great, and I like it. But I don't really consider it overly a horror film. It definitely still is a horror film. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, am I allowed to have these kind of criticisms about these? It's not exactly a criticism, it's just, I don't know, it's just the way I feel about these films. Maybe it's because I see them back to back, and like, there's different entertainment values out of them. Like, this is the first time I'd watched Evil Dead 2 this year. I've seen it a few times. I think I'd seen it like twice last year, maybe. And maybe twice the year before. I think I usually watch it twice a year, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, this time I just wasn't feeling it. Maybe it was because I was, it wasn't late at night or anything. I was actually pretty early in the day. Hell, I was showing my girlfriend it, and I was enjoying it. She liked it too, Most people I've showed it to really like it. Most people I know who talk about it really like it. but I've never really had a discussion with someone about which one is better of the two films, because they're both great at different things. I think the only problem with the second one is the tone shift. It just jumps so much around. And then, of course, it's like, you're getting scared by the horror that's happening to Ash, but then, nope, cut away, we're now with these people. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I still, look, I obviously personally give them both 5 stars. They're both terrific films. But I don't know, I just feel a bit of conflict. I'm trying to hopefully resolve this conflict. Because maybe I shouldn't be comparing them to each other, because even that seems fruitless, because it's one's a sequel to the other, but at the same time the narrative doesn't go across. I mean, not every sequel has the same characters, the same narrative, but it's like, but it does, in a way, You watch the second one, they've got this whole different origin for the Book of the Dead and everything, and it looks different because he burnt it in the first film. How is it back? Why would Ash go back to the cabin? Like they tried to, Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell tried to make this seem logical. It's like, oh, well, of course Ash is an idiot. Of course he'd go back to the same cabin that everyone of his family, his sister and his friends died in. To the point that they recall it in the TV show where he goes to his hometown. They call him Ashy Slashy because he chopped up his sister and his friends. But it's like, but wait, is this in the chronology of the second one? Because of course it is. He has his hand lopped off, but then he went back in time in that one. But then how can it be in the same chronology of the first one? Because the first one he destroyed the Book of the Dead with the 2 different books of the text. Maybe that's just my problem. Because I'm just overthinking it. As 2 different films. Mind-blowingly amazing. Hell, I don't know which one I'd recommend. Personally, I feel like I'd recommend the second one over the first one, just because it's just has so many more excellent moments, and the cheesiness is there, obviously, with the effects and stuff like that, but it's so well realized. And I mean, the first one is too. I don't know, maybe if someone was asking, I've got a colleague who's in his 50s, watched them both when they both came out, he loves the first one, because he's like, I love it because it's an actual horror film. He doesn't like the second one, he doesn't like the fact that they went comedy, he doesn't like the fact that it's slapstick. Now, of course, Sam Raimi is great at directing slapstick, and Bruce Campbell is terrific at acting with it. And the fact that he has so much of the film by himself is ridiculously amazing. They're 2 obviously different kinds of films, kind of. They're both horror, but one's horror slapstick, so of course the tone is going to be kind of out the window because it's different. I think it's mostly because my complaint is the fact that the atmosphere from the first one is completely gone by the time you get to the second one. The second one, the atmosphere doesn't really exist because they're amplifying the cheesiness. Pretty much, I feel like from the point that he not just kills his girlfriend, someone who you have no emotional connection with, because they're like, who gives a shit, let's move on. That's like the source of him going insane. And then her coming out of the grave, stop motion, puts her head back on, and then starts doing ballerina tricks until she vanishes into nothingness, and then spooks him until he wakes up. I feel like it's from that point on that you realize the horror is something different, and it's a different experience. But yeah, I don't know, it's fun. I feel like, look, I don't really know if how quickly I'd be rewatching the first one, for example, but I definitely know I'd give it enough time, and I could just really breathe in that atmosphere. I can still listen to the same with Alien. I've been watching Alien for over 10 years now, and I love the atmosphere in it. And though the film doesn't always scare me as much, except for that one facehugger jump scare, the first time it comes out of the egg, it still gets me. I still can't look at it when it happens. But the point being is that the alien doesn't scare me anymore, but the atmosphere does. The atmosphere is great. And I feel like that's the same as Evil Dead. There's no real scares in it. I think there's maybe at least 1 or 2 good jump scares, but for the most part, I think the jump scare that really got me is when he's standing up against. I think he's standing up against the door because he's waiting for something to happen, as if he heard something outside and he's waiting. And they leave it just long enough for I'd say the Deadite to just burst its arms through and grab him until he breaks free, and that got me. And it's like, I've seen this film before, and that jumped me, as much as I didn't really remember what was going to happen, and I knew what was going to happen, but it was just long enough to be an effective jump scare. It was good. It's good shit. I don't know. Overall, I feel like you should, if you haven't watched these two films, they're terrific, and I highly recommend them. Yes, they're cheesy in their effects, but at the same time, they're low-budget horror films. You can admire it in the Citizen Kane level of being like, look at the mastery of the cinema techniques and the filming and the editing, and boom, 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 boom. You know, they are masterpieces in terms of how they are made. But of course, the actual on-screen stuff, you know, the fact that maybe the acting's cheesy, or the directing may be cheesy, or the practical effects may be cheesy. Yeah, but that just makes you appreciate it more. You know, I've watched Citizen Kane. I think it's boring. I like it. I think it's boring. I think the whole masterpiece that it is definitely there, but I think it's boring. You get something like The Evil Dead, and it's a masterpiece in how they filmed it, but it's never boring because it's either consistently tense and atmospherically horrifying, or it's just fun and goofy because of how cheesy the effects are. It's good. I don't know. I think right now I'm preferring The Evil Dead over Evil Dead 2, but I think Evil Dead 2 has a lot more rewatchability to it. Outside of the ending, like, if you ignore the first film, go straight into the second one, and just take the ending of it as, because even the ending, I hate the ending, but I love it. Like, I hate it because it's like, oh, I have to watch the next one, but then you watch the start of the next one, and it's like, the continuity is off. Why is he being imprisoned? He was the hero. What is happening? But that's just because they kind of wrote themselves into a hole. You know, because he needs his hero arc. He can't just continue from the second one. He needs to actually have a hero arc. But then it's just fun where it's like, he does all this, and like, they finally defeat the evil, turn into a live thing, and then suddenly he gets teleported back in time, and he's just like, what the why am I here? And then, of course, they all want to kill him because it's like, you must be a Deadite because you look different. And then the actual Deadite comes along, which looks way different. And then the cheesy head of it exploding and just hanging there. It's great. Like, that could be the ending of itself, especially if, you know, them all being like, you're our hero, you're going to stay here forever. And he's like, well, no, I don't want to be here. It's just great. It's just fun. Like, yeah, I don't like the ending when you think of the start of the next one, just like how I don't like the start of Evil Dead 2 when you think of the ending of the first one. But at the same time, you think of all these films by themselves, I mean, except for really, if you go into the third one, I mean, if you look at them all as individual films, but I'd still say the third one connected to the second one for the obvious reasons of no hand, establishment of character, yada yada yada. They work individually, they work together kind of in a mess, but they're fun and different and evolving of filmmaking. Yeah. Alright, I feel more contemptive now, complete, that of like, yeah, no, I feel better now. Excellent. Look, if you have a different perspective on this trilogy, or even just the duology, and have your own arguments of it, feel free to discuss in the comments. I will happily reply. I like the idea of discussing film. It's one of my favourite things to do. I like talking about movies. And given that these two are two of my favourite horror films of all time, especially given that Evil Dead 2 is my second favourite film of all time, yeah. So yeah, feel free to, outside of that, you know, whatever, feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more. Check out my other horror stuff related to this month of October, because I'm doing Halloween stuff, kind of. Like, for a lot of people, October is a shitty month, because especially if you're a student, you got, you know, end of year exams, or if you're doing university, you've got the end of it's your last real month until like the first or second week of November, but mostly it's the whole of October. And my birthday's at the end of the month, and then of course I got Halloween the week after, so I've got a busy month. So I'm filming a lot of this stuff. I'm actually filming a lot of this stuff in September, but it's more or less because it's like, I want to get it all on October, because I like talking about horror, and it's apparently every other month that isn't October is not a friendly month for horror. No, you can't do horror unless it's October. Fucking rules, jeez. These guys didn't do the rules, they did their own thing. It's cool. Okay, they probably did abide by some rules, but still. Excellent. Well, that's a 30-minute long video. Okay, goodbye.